Tartan Taste Buds is the show from a state of mind that samples those taste buds associated with Bonnie, Scotland. I'm Paul John Dykes, and this week I'm joined by ex-Chelsea and Everton winger Pat Nevin. Will Pat enjoy the Scottish cuisine on offer? Let's join him on Tartan Taste Buds to find out. Pat Nevin, welcome to Tartan Taste Buds.
It's a pleasure.
We're going to have a little taste of Scotland today, Pat, and we do have the first dish. So there's nothing too scary about it. You actually have a selection. You've got a selection. There's a treble here.
Oh, wow.
Famous in Scotland, they now sell 6 million caramel wafers a week. Incredible. Have you got a sweet tooth?
If it's Tonic's, aye.
Absolutely. Well,
yes.
You can choose. You've got a choice of 3. You
A choice of 3. Right, I'm not allowed to eat them, but I love these. And I love the wafers. But
the wafers,
I've not had one of these for ages.
Do
you want me to just now or keep it?
You batter in. You batter in,
Right,
Pat.
okay. Do you know what I used to be able to do these? I used to be able to do a good trick with these. Where I would,
Was that a keep you up trick?
no, it was like catch it.
I'm impressed. I'm not going to try it, but I am impressed. On the subject of food, I'll do a wee bit of chat. What interests me about football and food is the whole science behind things like the dietitians and all the sciences. I think it's intriguing. Let's go back to your day. What was a typical pre-match?
It was so boring. You either had beans and toast, chicken with nothing. To me, actually, isn't a bad one. Some of the lads used to have a steak or something, but I thought that was bizarre. But I'd come into it from a different angle. By the time I was playing, say, with Chelsea or something, I'd been international with an under-18s, under whatever, 21s. And by that point, Andrew Roxburgh was in charge, and he was into the diet stuff, and he was into modern thinking. So that had already come down to us. So I was probably the first of a new generation that wasn't stupid about the diet. I had a problem, really, until I was about 26. I couldn't eat enough. My normal dinner for every day, lunch even, would be a main course as a starter, another main course, with a full hog, right, and a pudding, probably a wee starter as well, and then have that again in the evening. And I still couldn't put on weight because I was a fanatical trainer. I didn't weigh much anyway. I just burnt it all off. And I was secretly going and doing 10-mile runs at night because I love running. So in a way, I might have had a bad diet and a good diet and an average diet all at the same time. So right now they would check everything and make sure you know the exact amounts coming in. But then I just stopped eating obvious things, like didn't have a can of juice for about 25 years.
Really?
I think the last fizzy drink I had was probably when I was 19.
Right.
Until about 4 years ago, I hadn't had chips for the whole career. And then after, if you've not had chips for all that time, you just don't eat them. And certain things like that, you just don't eat them anymore because there's better things for you to eat. And then I had a doctor's appointment a while back and had something wrong. The doctor said to me, well, what you've got, you need to change your diet a wee bit. I don't want you eating those nuts and seeds and things like that, and chips. No chips. I said, yeah, no chips, I don't eat chips. No, I want you to eat chips, I don't want you to eat potatoes. What?
How does that work?
And he said, and bread, I eat brown bread, and I eat sourdough, white bread you need to eat. What? And there was a reason for it. So I had a doctor for about a year there saying to me, all the things that I'd never eaten, you better eat it. Didn't make me feel any better, so I went back to a good diet again. But the diet's big now in modern football. But I do think it can get a bit psychedelic about it. You can get a bit uptight about it, because I think there's a thing happening in football just now. Everyone talks about how amazing, how all the players know exactly what to do, and you're getting near the red zone. And I watched this, particularly in Chelsea now, because a lot of young kids coming through. And some of the young kids were coming through and they couldn't last 90 minutes. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, when I was 19, I could last 90 minutes and another 30. And if you ask me to do it again tomorrow, I'll do it again tomorrow. So there was something wrong. They weren't, and this red zone thing, I'm not as convinced by. And I talked to some of the nutritionists and some of the guys down at Chelsea recently. And I said, well, what's the story? You're stopping these guys building what you need inside. Oh, we can't let them into the red zones. I think, do you think Andy Murray doesn't go into the red zones when he's training? Do you think Djokovic doesn't go into the red zones? Do you think these people that push the envelope and know when to stop at the edge of the envelope and learn that? This is what top professionals learn to do with their body. And that's not been allowed these days. And there's something being missed a wee bit with some of them at the moment. So, yeah, good diet's great. Just be careful you don't get over-pushed. There was a good story. Brian McClare, one of my best mates, he was at Man United, and he'd said to me, Sir Alec's got a problem. This was when Sir Alec was the manager. He said, he's gotten all the information in for his football people, right? He's getting all the information in for his nutritionists. He's getting all the science, sports science coming in there. He's getting all this information. He's barrelloads of information, but he can't filter it. And he said, we need somebody who can filter it all. So his football, his medic, his stats, his all the... and give what's the right stuff to him. And Brian said, I can't find anybody. And I said, it's all right, I've got the guy. I know a guy. And I did. And I introduced him. And the guy's still there.
Yeah.
And he would, a guy called Les, who'd been a physio at Tranmere when I was there, became manager. What physio becomes a manager? And he did. And it's getting that, understanding the football side, the technical side, the stats side. It's not all one thing. Because I promise you, that side are telling you something totally different from what that side are telling you. And it's getting the right stuff at the right time, at the right balance. And you call it a science. Well, I'll tell you something about science, and they'll tell you themselves. They're trying to find the answers. They don't know the answers. They're trying to find the answers. They've got more answers now than they used to have. But in the midst of it all, you can't get too carried away with it.
You started your playing career in Scotland, and you ended your playing career in Scotland. And I've heard some comments from, in the past, Ronnie Dyler, for example, and recently John Collins talking about a culture within Scottish football. Some of that is the diet, some of it's alcohol, talking about 24-hour athletes. Do you think that's healthy? Or do you need to strike a balance, Pat?
I think it's different for different people. I mean, John Collins, and again, great friend. What a player, by the way, first of all. But John's like ultra. He's an ultra. When you get that sort of stuff, like, I mean, he's an extremist when you come to that sort of stuff. And it worked for him. And you won't find anybody in better nick. And I mean now, all these years after his career. So for him, it was important. For some others, it might not be quite as important, and they might be able to get by. But there is absolutely no doubt that you will be better if you're in good nick. The classic one was I played, particularly maybe at Everton for 5 years there, and there was a bit of a drinking culture for part of that squad when I was there, which drove me mad, and I had a problem. And I have written about it. The manager was involved in it. And I knew that they couldn't keep it up to the level the game was changing. And I was much more, the way I approached it probably looked more like a current player.
Right.
So I was kind of out of time in that position. And they thought I was the outsider, the idiot, the guy who didn't know anything. And I'm thinking, like, you're behind the times, this is changing. And they don't last. In the end, the culture may be there, but you'll never maximise your potential unless you do what is right for your body.
You look at Messi, Ronaldo, Ibrahimovic playing right into their sometimes late 30s, almost 40 in Zlatan's case. So surely it is something that's changing with the generations.
Yeah, I've thought about that quite a bit. I mean, a number of things is the medical side of it's great. I mean, a lot of players didn't play on because they snapped a cruciate and you're finished. Well, you snap your cruciate now, you'll be okay. Probably. There's a lot of injuries. I mean, I mentioned Sir Alex Ferguson in passing there. I mean, his injury stopped his career. It wouldn't have stopped his career afterwards. Brian Clough would have been one of the great centre forwards in history. He'd be fine now. The injury could have been fixed. Some of the injuries that a lot of the players that I watched, and they just gave up the game, it would have just put them out for 6 months. So that helps. There's something got to be said about the tackling. It's changed.
Oh, massively.
Massively. You don't get the hits the same way. Nowhere near the same sort of hits. I often talk to younger people about the game, and there's nothing more boring in this world than an old footballer saying, it was better in my day, which is BS anyway, right? But there is now and again a good chance to say something that's quite informative. And I actually carry about my phone a tackle that was made in me playing for Tranmere against Peterborough. And I swear to God, nobody can watch it without going, oh no, it's that bad. And he got sent off, but I thought, that's probably a booking in these days. Now you'd be in jail for about 10 weeks.
Yeah.
So the games are different. You get a lot of hits. You had to learn how to take a hit. You had to learn how to ride tackles. But I'd grown up with that. A lot of the kids don't have to grow up with that now because you're not going to get that number of hits. And people will always say to you, the game's faster now. Yeah, it might be a bit faster now. But you're not taking that level of abuse. You know, if I meet any players in my generation now, that are good mates and we haven't met for a while, everyone thinks you talk about the old days and you remember that game. No, you don't. You say, so what have you got? Hips, knee, ankles. And that's the first conversation every time. You walk on, they're kind of limping like that. And that's what the conversation is. Nowadays, it's better. You're not going to get anywhere near that. So they're lasting partially because of that. So it will be, take care of himself, diet, medic side of it. But the changing in the hits that you're getting is a big difference. I mean, the stuff from the back and all that's really totally different. And see, this is subtle because people say, oh, you'd love it now. I'm not sure. Because I would, because I was a technical player, and it's easier to be a technical player now than it was then. But one of my favourite things was to draw a defender and draw a tackle. So if somebody dived into me, I'm delighted. Because I'll skip you, or I'll do you, or dummy you, whatever. Most of the time it's not, it's pressing. And it's pressing around, and it's pressing in numbers, and it's close in space. So one of my favourite things, which was doing people because they lunged, you kind of hardly get that now. It doesn't really exist. And there's another change in the game that's had quite a big technical changes. You don't get, I would call people go there and there and there, change direction really quickly, because the modern pitches don't really allow it.
Right.
So the best players, including Messi, are slalom players. So I know you know your Celtic stuff, but if you watch Jinky play all those years ago, it's cast iron hips, you know, he's like that. You kind of almost couldn't do it now. You watch it, there's nobody really doing that now to that level. You can't in the modern pitches because you just slide.
Interesting.
So the game has changed in lots of ways, but I would have hoped that I'd have adapted, you know, done something different.
Oh, I'm sure you would. Are you ready
Well, I did actually.
You ready for another wee dish?
Go on, well.
We'll go for a second dish.
Go on.
Not sure what this is. Right, now you told me earlier that you went for 25 years without a soft drink. Are you still off them?
It's not off them, I just don't drink them.
You don't drink them?
If I would drink it, I'll have a drink.
Have a wee sip. When was the last time you had Iron Brew?
Honestly?
Yeah.
I was probably 16.
We're breaking new
That's
ground here.
30 odd years ago.
That's incredible.
It's not that
Would you
I
do
don't
it
know
for the
if I
benefit of the taste?
Of course I will do it. No, 100%.
Oh, wow.
I'm intrigued by
I
it.
can smell it.
What? I think I'm going to basically put a teaspoonful of sugar in my mouth now. But that might be, okay, right.
Here we go. This
It might
is
be a light bulb moment.
This will
Is it
almost
diet?
be- It's a full strength.
Right, okay.
A wee sip.
Well, it's not as stupidly sweet as I expected.
They've maybe changed it slightly since back in the day.
How long's this been open? Because it doesn't feel fizzy.
Is it not?
No. May I say, for me, that's a good thing. But that's all right.
It's all right.
No,
But different from what
not
I
against
remember.
it. Yes. I remember it as being fizzy. I actually remember it as being metallic. Out of the big bottle and just drinking it like that. But that doesn't feel as sweet as I thought it would be.
How would you
Weird.
describe that to someone from overseas who's never tasted this Scottish delicacy?
Because I'm not used to it, it does feel like sugar water. It does feel a wee bit like
fruity?
sugar. It's a memory from my past.
Yeah,
So I can't tell you almost brand new. I'm basically in 7 Edelwood Road in Easterhouse here. I've just been transported.
That's incredible.
That's exactly where I am. You know, tastes do that to you, don't they? They take you somewhere, or a smell does that. And I'm 8, and I'm 7 years old, and it's a warm day, slugging a bottle of Andrew.
Thanks for getting into the spirit of
No,
it.
no
Pat,
problem.
After all these years.
I would have, but I've not. It's not that I dislike them or hate them. I stopped having them because I didn't think it would be good for me, and it never occurred for me to have them again. Because, by the way, before you get carried away, I do drink wine and whiskey, and not, I'm not a complete austere, earnest swine. But
You were dedicated
it's all right.
to your craft.
I'll be honest with you. I won't be having a bottle later, but it's all right. It's all right.
Well, that means you can't blame us for any kind of tooth-rotting
No.
addiction later on, Pat. But when we're looking at, obviously, the heritage of Scotland and all these different foods, it's interesting that you've not had that for decades, so thanks for sharing your
Pleasure.
experiences.
Yeah,
the senses do take you back, and we will be talking about your lovely music later on in the show. But let's talk about the intellectual footballer. Now, you've named your book The Accidental Footballer.
Yeah.
And you expected to maybe follow a career path similar to your brothers and move into education, for example. How difficult was it back then, in the 80s and 90s, to have various interests that weren't your typical footballer's interests?
It never affected me at all. I knew that the lads were different interests than I had. So, you know, if I would have been going to see a band after training, you know, I might have been going to see a wee band that nobody knew called Simple Minds, like tiny wee band, who apparently were quite big. And they would go, get that rubbish off, sort of thing. And I said, no, you'll like them eventually, you will. No, it's rubbish. Of course they all did. But it took about 10 years. So I had other interests. I was lucky, I had another bunch of pals. And I would ask anybody who's listening or watching, do you really hang about with your workmates, really? All the time? Just because you're a footballer?
Aye.
Do you really... Now, this is a big thing. We're all fed this in the media that they all basically live in this big VIP house together. We kind of don't. Some of them are good mates, some of them aren't, some of them hang about a bit, some of them don't. But the whole idea that you have to be inside each other's pockets. So when I was growing up, apart from the fact that I had 5 siblings, the fact that I had a whole bunch of mates that were schoolmates, that are still mates. My college mates when I was doing my degree in Glasgow, still mates. When I went to London, loads of my mates were mostly musicians, artists, you know, or a bin man. But they were just people. I just like people, and I wouldn't want to, and there was a wee bit of me, and I know what you're getting at, that I didn't want to fall into that world and be sucked into that world, because I didn't like it. I was frightened is the wrong word. I was extremely wary of the fame. Didn't like it. I didn't like celebrity. Just couldn't go. I just like talent. I love talent. So the classic example was, I was a Celtic, mad Celtics fan at the time. I would go and watch Celtic, right? And I would see Kenny coming through, and I'd be watching Jinky, and I'd be seeing Danny McGray, and I was seeing all that, and I was like, oh. And then I'd end up trading them. That's all right, it's just Kenny and Danny. It's 2 different things. Yeah. And I had this thing of, no, just normal people when you meet them. And I became friends with these guys years later. I played with Kenny for Scotland and that. And yes, you can stand at a distance and go, well, that's that Kenny. But this Kenny's all right, and you can have a laugh with him. You can actually argue with him if you want, which I did. By a mistake with me and Jockey. But I didn't want to get sucked into that life. And a very simple way, and it's a really honest way. I kind of fancied getting married and all that sort of stuff, and I didn't want to be married to somebody who liked me for this famous footballer, but I wanted somebody who was normal, who kind of liked me for me. So I didn't want any all that stuff, and I certainly didn't want friends who liked me because I was famous. I didn't want none of that. So that's why sometimes if you meet people that are like you but in the arts or something like that, they get that. They absolutely get that. Some of them, you meet some of them, they're just trying to be stars and divas, and you think, get lost, not interested. But it's a weird life to watch, and that's why I actually started talking about it and writing about it, because what you tend to find is, I used to read a lot about autobiographies of sportsmen or people like that to try and inside it, but I found out I was reading what they told somebody else who wrote for them. Fine. You're getting an insider's view through a funnel, or, you know, it's fine. But when I talk about it, I'm an outsider inside. I'm like me and you.
Did you feel a bit like an outsider at times?
Aye, and I loved it. And it's one of the main things in my life, the comfort of being an outsider. And it's something that I've tried subtly, and hopefully not standing in a pulpit shouting it. If I can be an obvious outsider that doesn't have the same interests, but can still survive in the world, whoever you are, whatever you're doing, whatever your religion, sexuality, colour, you name it, be yourself. Just be yourself. And you can survive. And if you're comfortable in yourself, don't try and ape other people. Don't do it. Because you'll not be yourself anymore. You'll look in the mirror and you won't know who you were. And, oh, my mates are like that. You're talking about Chalky. Clearly, like that, you know. And it's almost outwardly saying to people, it's okay to be yourself.
When did you first meet Brian McClure?
Chalky was a good one. Because with the Scotland under 18s, I was a real outsider. All the others were pros. There was a couple of lads I quite liked. Hart was there, right? So Paul McStay was there, and a couple of others that I quite liked, and I knew a wee bit. But we didn't have a great deal in common. So they put me in with this other guy who I'd never heard of. Oh, God, another one. So sat down, we went in the bunk beds down at Inverclyde, and he's sitting in I think he was in the top bunk. I went, hi. I'm thinking, I'm not expecting to get on well with this guy. And he went, Brian doesn't say a lot. And I've got the NME, the New Musical Express. And I looked up and I think he's got Melody Maker or Sounds or something. Right. And I went, interesting. I wonder. And we just talked all night. And I would say within 5 minutes, just thought, right, kindred spirits. And it was brilliant to find one. I hadn't found one before then. I hadn't found anyone that I thought, well, I'll hang about with you. I'd found people that were all right and I quite liked, but they weren't going to have... I don't want to hang about with people with the same interests in me, but you need something. And Brian was studying. He was doing maths at Glasgow, and I was studying. I was doing my degree at what is now Caledonian University. I prefer to call it Glasgow Tech.
That's it.
Yeah, so we had mountains in common, so music was a big thing. And it was really strange because he's got that thing that I love, and it's that the English don't get it. They really don't get it. And I'm not anti-English, but I love England. I lived there. I work there now, and I've worked there for many years. But they don't get our dourness. They just don't. They just can't get it. I mean, the classic example is Andy Murray, isn't it? And all those years they hated him. And I'm thinking, why don't you get it? He's ripping you. He's taking the mick. He's laughing. I've thought about this a lot. So there's people like Chalky. And there's loads. I think it all goes back to Chick Murray, that kind of dour, droll. And Kenny's like that. You know, there's millions of them. And they're all really dry. And I love that. There's a guy, you'll probably cough and fall down with this. Another guy who was like that was Jim Traynor, weirdly enough. It was really unbelievably dourly dry, and I kind of liked that dryness. Because I've got this thing, I like to make them people laugh. So that he had that personality of them types of people. And I just kind of immediately, and he was a player as well. And I very, very nearly, again, hands up now, it's probably 3 times in my career I nearly stole 3 Celtic players. And he was one of them. Because when I was at Chelsea, we were looking for a striker. And I'd said to him, look, you've got to get this guy McClure. He's up at Celtic, honestly, different class. How do you know? He's my best mate. Right, is that why we're getting him? No, he's a player, honestly. What a scorer, look at his numbers. And they kind of fudged it for a wee while. And while they were thinking about it, United came in and got him. And it was devastating though, because if we'd have got Chalky, apart from me having somebody to hang about with, which would have been good, it would have been a great player to play with. In the end, we did play together a couple of times for Scotland, and we did play at the end for Motherwell, but it was long after Chalky's best. But he was another one up to it. It was at heart, but I was going to steal a player, and he was only... Do you know about the 2 others?
Well, I hope one of them wasn't Paul McStay, but...
No, it wasn't. You'll be happy to hear that. No, I told Chelsea they should buy a player a while back, and they said, no, we've looked at him, we don't think he's good enough. And I said, right, he's the best I've ever seen. He went, no, he makes mistakes. Yes, it's too easy for him in Scotland. No. Anyway, Van Dijk eventually goes to Southampton. And they could have gone for 11 million quid, and I'm saying, I'd say to them, it'll cost you 15 to 20. If they'd have listened to me, Celtic probably would have got more money for him. And the other one was a couple of years back. I just said, like, Tierney's the best I've seen. And I mean, I've not got any big push down there. But they were, I just said, if you are looking for somebody in that position, there's nobody near him. And I was like, no, he's not even the best in Scotland. And I mean, he is the best left fullback in Scotland, that Scotland has. And I do think Robertson's a fabulous, fabulous player. Tierney's different gravy altogether. Tierney's world class. And I would actually have Kieran probably above anybody else on the planet now at that position. Well, positions.
And he's getting better.
Honestly, I can't see a weakness.
You could have made Chelsea a lot of money.
I think I did on a couple of occasions in other ones, but it's stupid. And the thing is, it sounds terrible you're stealing people. You're not stealing because you're paying the money, but the player, they're going to leave eventually, and you want them to get to the best place. And everybody has to push their own career in their own way in the event eventually. And they two were just unbelievable. When I got to see I cover Celtic games at the time. I was working a wee bit for the BBC Scotland at the time, and you'd see them and you just think, well, particularly Van Dijk used to go on mazy dribbles up the right wing, and people are going, oh, he's no control. Yes, he has. He's bored. He's really bored. Yeah. It's too easy for him back there. He's unbelievably good. And I thought he was going at about 40%.
It must get to that stage. I remember at St Johnstone we couldn't carve them open, so he just got the ball in his own half, went on a mazy.
And also, they've not even started using his free kicks down there yet. He's got that. So, all that sort of stuff. So, anyway, way back to Chalky. He was a really handy to have somebody like that. But it wasn't a problem, but I didn't have that many mates. And eventually, it was down at Chelsea, there was a kid coming through, and I kind of fashioned him into a kind of friend. You know, kind of moulded him into kind of. Graham Lasso done all right in the end, didn't he? Done all right. Not too bad.
Certainly did. See, when you look at that, you didn't like the fame and fortune of the game. It's turned on its head, isn't it? So now it's all about that, it seems, and players are all celebrities almost. They've got this social media presence, Pat. How do we control that?
I'm quite a wee bit old school on that one. I hate to say it. I often see people, and we were talking at a time when a lot of the clubs are saying they're not going to deal with social media at the moment. I can't believe it's taken them this long to figure that one out. I mean, so done that ages ago, and you'd have brought Twitter to its knees, and they'd have made a change. You don't actually have to play that game. You know, the players are saying, oh, but I'm in the media all the time. If I go out and I go to a nightclub or I go to everyone bought, well, don't go to them ones. Go to other ones that are sensible. Yeah. You know, when I went down to London at the same time as Charlie Nicholas. So Charlie's going to the big fancy nightclubs. Well, I'm going to the Institute of Contemporary Art to see a band, like a Scottish band like Strawberry Switchblade or Paul Haig or something. You know, you kind of don't need to do that sort of stuff. Yeah. If you want to live that life, live it. There's a cost. There is a cost. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. And there is a certain level of fame, you know, Messi's and all the rest of it. That's hard. But that's the cost of X amount of tens of millions a year. There is a cost to be paid. And there are positives to it as well. But there's a wee bit in me that there are some people that will go and sell themselves, and then suddenly something they don't like happens. Not abuse, that shouldn't be accepted, but something they don't like happens. And they're all upset about it. And I think, well, no, that's the territory. You play that game or you don't play that game. Or you play it to a certain level. And I hated the concept of celebrity and all that in football because I just loved the art of football, the actual playing of football, the love of it. But then I was brought up in the west of Scotland, and I was brought up watching people. I mean, Stevie Chalmers lived 2 streets away from me in Easterhouse. I mean, you could actually live quite a normal life for a long, long time. And having been in that area where I've had times when I've been in the public eye, I still could live a normal life. And there's no reason why you shouldn't. And so I don't like the abuse. I think that's horrendous, and I think we'll get there eventually with social media companies because they only care about one thing. They only care about one thing. It's the bottom line. It's money. It's the economy, stupid. So if you hit them in the pocket, and the best people on the planet to hit them in the pocket now are either superstar singers, game players, or soccer players, football players. So if they turn on them, trust me, they'll change. And I think we'll see it. We'll see it.
Definitely. See, when you're talking about your career, you've already showed us some of your skills with the Tonic's tea cake. By 8 years old, you were juggling a football 10,000 times.
Yeah.
Now, how big a part of that was the influence of your father?
Yeah, that was kind of a bit of a hero to me. He'd been a boxer in the Navy and things like that, but he's a hard-working man. Worked in railways. Never got as far as he should have. And clever, really intelligent man as well. Totally dedicated to the things that, not just us, but everybody in the community in the area. You know, if the football team's been run, my dad would run them, just for the sake of it, just to help. Because the other parents might have been in the pub, but he would do it. And he'd be doing that 3-4 nights a week. But he trained all of the boys in our team, in our family. And I just really kept on going. I just took to it. You know, my older brothers done it for a while, and they played a bit of football. Decent players as well, really good players. Both older brothers could probably have made it to a level, I think. But I just really stuck to it. I was really dedicated. I loved the concept of getting better at it. And I just had this kind of real, I can only describe it as joy of playing football. I loved actually having a ball at my feet. And it's very strange because the education side was big as well. My mum particularly, but my dad as well, made sure you get the best education you could. They weren't like tiger mum and dad. They were just encouraging mum and dad. That's all. You know, and they weren't educated themselves in any tertiary way. So we would go and I loved learning. So I'd go to games. Again, I was very, very fortunate. You got to be lucky anywhere in life. I was watching the old Lisbon Lions and the new Quality Street kids coming through at Celtic. I mean, I'm going to learn. Because watching players like that, you think, whoa. And I'm seeing George Conley coming through. I'm seeing Danny coming through. I mean, I loved Davy. Davy Hay was an unbelievable player. He had the choice, I don't know if you know, you probably do. He had the choice of Chelsea, Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal, everybody. He chose Chelsea. It was a shame. It didn't work for him because he damaged his eye. He would have been one of the greats, right? He's almost missed out in the conversation when you talk about these players. And he was world class. He was Scotland's captain in '74, wasn't he, for part of the World Cup. So I'm watching these guys, and some of them come at the end of their careers, and I'm going home every day having memorised the trick or the thing that made them special. And I had just to think for this. My dad would be watching, he'd be going, did you see that one? So-and-so did or so-and-so did. Yeah. And we just learn and learn and learn and learn, and then I've got it. And I'd learned every trick, and I could show you a TC, a Tommy Callahan trick now. I could still do it, and it was quite a simple one, but I knew his trick, and I learned his trick, and and you couldn't always do their trick, I say trick with their specialism, as well as them. I mean, Kenny's was quite often getting the ball in the corner 18-yard line, and pinging it into the top corner with a curl. It's kind of hard to learn that one. You can practice it, but he was like, Salah does it a lot now. And when he was at Celtic, that's what Kenny used to do all the time, I thought. But I just wanted to learn. And each time I learned it, and then I'd go and play football with your mates, and they couldn't get near you, because you had all this. And I just loved being that good at it, you know, because I was better than other people my own age, so I'd end up going up ages all the time. So it's a brilliant, brilliant feeling to be good at something. But I was doing it for the joy. I wasn't doing it to show off to anybody else. I wasn't doing it to impress anybody else. I was doing it because it's great fun. It's just great fun. There was so many tricks. The one guy, there's one guy, I could never get his trick. And oh God, I watched him for years. 2 tricks in my life I never could get. Maradona had one, which was a flick behind his head and that way. You just got to be double jointed, right? Just couldn't do it. Tried it, got a version of it, but unbelievable. But the other one was Tam Burns. And you say that and you go, what was his trick? His trick that there wasn't a trick. He would, because Tam was slow, and he'd run towards players, do something. They'd fall down and he'd just walk past. You'd think, what did you do? And I'd be staring at it. Yeah, you can you? And I'd be staring going, what did, rewind that. And I couldn't get Tam. And Tam was the boys' club before me. So I knew Tam a bit as well, just a wee bit. And I just never got it. I just thought, I reckon it's just class. You know, back to the thing is I was learning off of good people. And I was finding all this stuff. And I was loving all this stuff. But it was never to be a footballer. It was always to enjoy playing a game of football. And that was it. And that never changed.
You mentioned Diego. You shared a pitch with him.
I did. I played with Maradona. It's one of those weird things. See, when you come from where I come from, and you end up playing a pitch with Diego Maradona, and having also met and spent an evening taking care of Pele as well for an evening, it's kind of weird. But it's that thing I was telling you about, the fame thing. There's Diego, wow, Diego, and there's Diego you're playing against. It's just a player. And you've got to do that. I'll be absolutely honest with you, it was a friendly, it was at Wembley. Yes, I was playing for England. It was English Football League. But to play alongside him was amazing. There was other unbelievable players playing that day. I mean, the best players in the world were playing that day. So it was great to have been on the pitch with him. But he became he was our guest when I was chairman of the PFA, our special guest one year in our award ceremony. And his behaviour wasn't great. And, he wouldn't mix with anyone. Wouldn't hang about. He went up and just come down and do a wee speech and give the player of the year to, I think, was it Paul McGrath? I don't think it was. Somebody else anyway. And that was it. And then Pele comes, and I spend 5 hours with Pele. And he talks to everyone, and he signs every autograph, and he gives me, I can't remember if I wrote it in the book or not. He invited me to Brazil to go and spend some time with him and help him build up the union over there. And I'm going, am I dreaming this? Is this really happening?
Incredible.
What was really upsetting was he'd said to me, because it was in 96, was it 96? Yeah, and I was just falling. We went to Scotland play England in the Euros, the guys. 96. Yeah. Well, I was just coming out of the Scotland team, but I was still fighting to get into those Euros. And I'd met Pele before it. Funnily enough, he'd met my dad as well, completely separately. Another story. Then the next day. But he said to me at the end of the night, he said, it was a brilliant night, the PFA is phenomenal. What an organisation you are. What you do for the players is incredible. Could you come over and do it for us? And I'm thinking, probably ought to ask Gordon Taylor to do that. He did it. And it was kind of weird. And he goes, oh, we shall meet again. And I said, well, that would be nice thinking. Yeah, I bet you say that to everyone. And he says, are you at the England-Scotland game coming? And I went, well, I hope to be in the squad, yes. And he goes, I am going to be the guest of honour. So when I come and shake everyone's hand, we will have a great big hug. And I'm thinking, how good will that look?
I know,
it's just my mate Edson, just my mate. And I get dropped. Oh, I never got to the squad.
Yeah, mate.
And I wanted to be in the squad, but I quite liked it.
The thing is, you even call him Edson there, Pat, so he must be your pal.
No, he specifically said to come. He said, my friends call me Edson, please call me Edson.
Brilliant.
And then he explained to me that Edson is a misspelling. It's wrong. He was supposed to be called Edison. It's a mistake. His dad spelt it wrong because he was supposed to be called Edison because Edison means light, Thomas Edison.
Yeah.
And that's why he was called Edison. But he misspelt it, so that's why it's called Edson. Honestly, he's a font of stories, beautiful and seriously intelligent man. And so you talk about Diego, and it's brilliant, yeah. But Pele, wow. I mean, I don't know who's the better player. I couldn't tell you. Diego was unbelievable. I mean, I loved watching him. I used to I used to tape every single football show, Italian football, even when I was playing, so that I could see a wee bit of Diego and try and learn some of those things. But believe the hell, they were hard to learn because he was unbelievable.
You ready for another wee dish?
Go on, go for it.
Let's do it. This is a dish, Pat, that you will recognise. I'm not expecting you to eat the whole lot.
Okay.
So, it is indeed
Oh.
the world famous Haggis. When you look at that, is it more of a chippy dish for you, or is it a traditional kind of Burns night thing?
I'll be honest, it's Burns night for me now,
Yeah.
because as I've got older, I would never have had haggis before I left Scotland. Never. It wouldn't have, my family wouldn't have had it. Our background's Irish,
Right.
so haggis wouldn't have been a thing. We weren't big on, maybe a fish and chip shop now and again, but I love haggis. But I've never had battered haggis.
Oh, really?
Never.
Today, we're breaking new ground.
I've never
Would
had
you like
it.
to take a wee taste
Yeah,
of it?
I'm
You
game.
buy your input.
I'll not throw it this time, although I could. It's my, that's a bit oily, that.
It smells delicious from someone who's not able to indulge.
I'm going to, notice that. Give me a knife and fork. Don't need it.
So this is with batter, so it's a slightly different experience for you. Pat.
It's, the haggis is all right. It's a bit dry, but it's, I'm not man, I don't like the batter. The batter's wasting it.
Is it wasting?
Look,
Well,
I've eaten
I need to get some vegetarian haggis to remind myself what it tastes like. We've been talking about your football career, and I find it interesting that you started off with a club that you supported as a kid, and you played with a boys' club, and then there's an S form, and you're there for 4 years,
Yeah.
and you absolutely excel. 160 goals in your first season.
Well,
Why on earth? You know, I've read your book, and there's a moment where the Celtic Boys Club stand up after you get the chairman's player of the year or the boy of the year, and he says, "You guys are making a mistake by letting this guy go."
which was a big thing to say, because Celtic Football Club are sitting there, manager's sitting there, and the staff that make a decision of who to take from the boys' club to the football club. But that time I'd been told that Celtic weren't going to keep me as an S form. They weren't giving me a contract after the S form, and I wasn't that bothered. I was going to go stand in the jungle anyway. So you probably noticed I was quite a big Celtic fan, and it was really, really weird, because I didn't think I was going to get that, and it was the biggest shock, and I was trying to get my head around it as I was walking up to get this. I'm thinking, did they really say my name? You know, because anyway, go up and get it, and he's had a right dig at this Celtic, and there's I don't know if there's 1,000 people there, but there's a lot of people. It was not. What was the name of that place? On the way out of Glasgow up towards Hampden, there was a big place. Oh, New Order played there. Anyway, that's how I remember it. But the first gig in Glasgow there. But everyone dolled up, and all the rest of it, everyone was dressed up. And it was all you kind of had to be there if you were into football. And that's me walking up going, I had no idea what's going on here. But I'd been told that they didn't think I was going to be good enough or big enough. Thought I was an intelligent kid, go and get an education. I agreed with them. But that happening then was a bit weird. The other side of it, there were other people trying to get me to push on to become a pro, and they couldn't get their heads around the fact that actually I'm not that interested. I just want to play. It didn't matter where I play. Funnily enough, of all people, Davy Moyes was working really hard on it, and his dad was working with, I think it was Drumchapel Hannishers or Dundalk Hibs, something like that. I said, no, I'm not that bored. And eventually did fall back into it a wee while later and went to Garcosh. But by that time, it probably made me a better player. And it made me a better player because I was relaxed. I was relaxed beforehand, but I thought, actually, I didn't think and I'm not hurt by this. I'm all right. I was worried about my dad because he's a big Celtic man and he thought I was good enough to make it. But I wasn't that bothered about it. It seemed, when you think about it, the people that had gone on before me, Charlie, Boys Club, Celtic, Roy Aitken, Boys Club, Celtic, Tam Burns, Boys Club, Celtic, McStay, straight on. You know, it's a well-worn path. There was a lot of good players making the jump. And in the team, without being arrogant, it looked like I'd be the one that would go within our team. We had players like Jim McNally, who went to Dundee United and Nottingham Forest and all that. But, you know, they'd made a decision. I never argued for a millisecond. Just went, thanks. And kind of smiled a wee bit. It seems odd because they really helped me by doing it, in retrospect. I ended up within about a year later playing for Clyde while doing my studying. I had 100 games under my belt. See if I had stayed at Celtic, I wouldn't have been in the team. By a year after that, by the time I was about 20, I played 2 seasons with Clyde, a season with Chelsea, got Player of the Year at Chelsea. I probably still wouldn't have been in the Celtic team. So really they helped me. And you have to accept that, you know, whether it was meant, it wasn't meant, but it helped. And there's a lot of players that, you know, players that I've played with at the time, I thought, you should have gone.
Yeah.
You really should have gone. And it's nothing against Celtic or Rangers or Man United. Get out there and play. You never get them 3 years back. And I ask anybody to think, who's listening to this, who's over the age of 21, 22, think of who you were at 16, 17, think of who you were at 20 and what you learned in those years and how it shaped you. How your person, your personality, your psychology, it's a big part of your life. Now, those years I was playing first team football every single week and I learned like that. And the others were training every week, kind of not learning anywhere near the same level. It's not always the case. I watched just now and I watched the boy Foden at City, Man City. And no, his has been fine. He was playing with Silva and De Bruyne every week in training. That kind of helped. But you got to get out there and play. You know, it really helps. And that was maybe a mistake that was made by a lot of clubs. And it's usually big clubs, but they have to understand that they should help them by loaning. I always thought loaning was the best thing imaginable. Used in the correct way, it's just the most brilliant thing. And it works well. I mean, Ken Dalglish went on Cumbernauld United, if I remember correctly. So it helps, it works. So, no, they didn't take me on. It didn't upset me. And but many, many years later, I found out my dad was very disappointed.
Well, this is the thing that comes through quite clear in the book, is you even speak about certain games that you went to, big games, 1970 European Cup semi-final, with some of the Quality Street kids starring in that game. And it's quite clear that you come from the Celtic background, the Celtic family. And the one thing, as a fan, watching your career progressing, is there's certain players you always want to sign for Celtic. You actually mentioned one earlier, Paul McGrath. I would have loved Paul McGrath to sign for Celtic. And I'm not just saying this because you're here, but Pat Nevin was a name that a lot of Celtic fans would have loved to have seen. And you flirted with it a few times. When did you come your closest? Was it under Davy Hay when you wanted to bring you in?
I think they tried to buy me 4 times in my career. And everyone's a ridiculously daft story. There's nothing I could do about it. Under contract, you're stuffed. Unless you're at the end of your contract, you're kind of stuffed. You have to hope the club will sell you. When I was at Chelsea, Celtic came in, they wanted either Joe McLaughlin and me or Stevie Clark and me, which made perfect sense. Club wouldn't let us go. When I was leaving Chelsea, Celtic weren't coming in, but I was expensive at that point. It was a lot of money. So I understood that. Then when I was at Everton, it happened again. So much so that I just went up and spoke to one of the directors. Met him in a hotel in central Glasgow. And there was no hiding, we just sat in a hotel having a chat in the main room. And the classic line of, at the end of it, I said, look, he said, will you come? And I said, look, Celtic's my team, of course I'm going to come. He said, he said, you know, we don't pay as much as a lot of teams. I went, look, just pay me what I'm on, it's not daft. I'm not a money grabber, but just pay me what I'm on, it's fine. All right. And then a phone call the next day. One extra thing, you're not a greedy boy, are you, Pat? Come on, that's not how you do it. Anyway, eventually, they never came. They must have went to the club and the club must have turned them down again. But it happens all the time. People forget that it happens all the time, that clubs come into you. There was one strange one that happened when I was at Tranmere. I was probably playing the best football in my career. I was absolutely flying. I was playing for Scotland all the time and everything. And I'd scored a couple against Estonia for Scotland. And I'd teamed up so well with JC and Tam Boyd on the left. And I'm just thinking, and Paul was playing. And I'm just thinking, yeah, that'll work. This could be great. And Kevin Gallagher was up front, Jockey was playing, like surrounded by your mates. It was right, we played well, it was a good game, it just worked. And I scored, and after I scored, I've got Paul going, you're signing for us, you, as I'm running back. Brilliant. And it was really funny. Anyway, I was kind of looked like I might leave Tranmere. It was going well, but there was a lot of clubs interested. I was a Bolton scout phoned me up, and he said, Joe, I think they're taking you to Bolton. I went, oh, I'll think about it, because Bolton were in the Premier League at the time. I was at Tranmere, who was the league below, but we were hitting for promotion every year. It was really close. And by the way, you wouldn't know it, but Bolton and Tranmere hate each other with a passion, right? It's like, it's not quite Celtic Rangers, but they hate each other, right? So that would have been hard, but you know. Anyway, I thought about it, I talked to my wife and I said, look, I'm just happy playing football at Tranmere, why leave? And then I go in a couple of days later and the manager says, there's been a bid for you. And I said, look, before you go, I'm not interested. Don't want to know. I'm really happy here, don't care. I want to get us to the Premier League. And he went, that's fantastic, Pat, thanks for that. I went, good, I'll go out to training then. He went, yeah, yeah. And as I was shutting the door, he said, do you want to know who it was? And I went, oh yeah, who is it? He said, Celtic. Oh, shit. And I turned down Celtic not knowing it. I thought it was Bolton. So I kind of, it was just never going to happen.
Never going to be.
Yeah, and it was a shame because I think I might have talked about it in the book. I don't get nervous, but I was nervous once in my life. And I didn't know what nerves were. And it was playing for Everton against Celtic at Celtic Partner Friendly. And it's this beautiful, beautiful moment. Some people there might remember it. So I'm walking out of Celtic, but I'm 26. I've played in cup finals. I've played Scotland, England. I've played Chelsea, Arsenal, Spurs, you name it. Playing big games. I'm walking out for a friendly against Celtic at the start of the season. And as I'm walking out, there's a huge roar. And I go, oh, Charlie's just re-signed. I wonder, where's Charlie? But it was me. And it was like spine-tingling moment. And I think I'd played the day before for Scotland against the Scottish League the day before. So I played 2 games in 2 days. And you've never seen me trying so hard, every trick, every skill, just to show people and just to say, you know. And it was probably the high point of my feelings with Celtic that day, you know. And it was weird. And the manager, our manager was Colin Harvey, big Celtic fan. You know, Evertonian, big Celtic fan. Because most Evertonians are Celtic fans, right? You probably know that. And he said, I know what it is, you're nervous. I went, I've never felt nervous. Is this what it is? And he goes, yeah. He goes, I've got it too, Celtic Park. And I was like, so it was a weird thing. So came close, and by the time it could have happened when I was leaving Tranmere, I was probably just too old. I ended up going to Kilmarnock instead.
Right, the big reveal.
Oh, right. Ben, don't tell me what it is and I'll smell it first. No?
You did say earlier that you like a glass of wine.
Is that port? Sherry?
That's a good shout. If you try it, just a wee sip, just a little sip.
Okay.
And it is something that is often
It's not red wine. Can't be.
It's a bit too brown, isn't it? What's your thoughts on that? It does taste a bit like port.
I've got a horrible, horrible feeling I know what this is. And I've got a horrible feeling this is the first time in my life I've ever tasted it.
Today's full of experiences, Pat.
You
know what it is, don't you? Going in for a second sip.
It is, isn't it?
It's the famous.
It's actually all right.
It's not bad, is it?
Oh my God. See, when I was growing up, do you know this? Do you know what Lambic was? You ever heard that?
I've heard my dad talking about that.
Same thing, same sort of thing. The Rangers fans drank Lambic. So I find is that right? Yeah. I heard a story that there's 2 places in the world this is drunk. Only 2 places that it's drunk in big numbers, which is, I'm not going to say Coatbridge, but you know, that area of Scotland's big for it, right? West of Scotland, right? Northern Italy with wee grannies.
Is that right?
Really big,
Wow.
big seller. And they take it as a wee thing, aperitif thing. In actual fact, I get that now. That's not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
We weren't trying to con you into that.
No.
But it is the Buckfast Tonic wine.
It's actually all right.
Although not originating from Scotland, Scotland has obviously put it on the map in some respects. Very popular up here, very potent. But I do think it tastes a bit like port.
Yeah,
So
I honestly said sherry port. Remember, I was an altar boy. So I know what pork tastes like. Am I allowed to own up to that now?
The tartan taste buds are flown.
That's incredible.
It's not as bad
as not as bad as I
the
thought.
perception. You
No,
know.
it's not.
But let's talk about politics. And I look at some of the parts of your book where you're talking about your dad. You mentioned earlier he didn't get as far as he should have done. And a big part of that would have been the prejudice because he was a Catholic and he worked for, was it British?
British Rail, and it was certainly there was a few Catholics working there. I mean, it was just a big normal thing. I mean, the shipyards were the same.
See, when you grow up, there's a moment, you see it's some kind of political enlightenment. Kind of mid-teens?
Yeah, I think the subtlety of my family was they were left of centre, but quite, it's hard to explain it. Socialist in a non-political way. You care about fellow human beings. It's like Christian, or you could say Catholic, or socialist. It's just about caring about your fellow human being. All the more extreme isms of you go from that, my parents wouldn't have been interested in. Extreme stuff, not interested in at all. Political discussions with parties would not have been a discussion in our household when we were growing up. But it was definitely a feeling of you did the right thing by the right people. So by about certainly 13, 14, 15, whatever, round about then, go to secondary school, that started to crystallise into things like, right, okay, learning about what was happening with apartheid in South Africa, realising what had happened to my dad and Catholics in that part of the world for a long time. And, my dad's old enough in the generation to remember the signs of no dogs, no Irish, and no blacks, and by that I meant Catholics. And so you knew there was prejudice there, and you knew that a lot of it was ingrained. I felt running for my dad, because he's an intelligent man, and unbelievably hardworking. And I learned a couple of things off of him, and it would be seen as naive by some people. Like, they'd give him jobs like shoveling coal. Now, he's quite capable of driving a crane that had 47 gears, but he'd give him a job of shoveling coal when he first started. You remember him telling me this story? And he would spend like 5 hours shoveling coal. And they would be thinking, we've got him shoveling coal. He's a boxer, it's great training. He's just training as far as he's concerned. See the positives out of it. Yeah. So he got a lot of that sort of stuff. And instead of being bitter, which he scarcely was if he was at all, instead of raging against it, he said, I'll behave the right way. I'll behave correctly. I will work hard. I'll be dedicated to my job and see if people learn from it. And they learned from it to a degree of he wasn't given promotions, but then they didn't get rid of him. They didn't sack him, which our family, like any family at the time, would have been a nightmare. So it's not that he kept his head down, and if anyone crossed him, he'd have sparked them. But in actual fact, he got respect from that. Now, I think I met some of his workmates once in my life, and they were fond of him. But there was that line where they wouldn't, and it was just accepted. And where we grew up, you knew it was there. I mean, this was the time. I recently said something in a comedy fighting talk at the BBC a couple of weeks ago about the first Catholic to sign for Rangers. It was Maurice Johnson, right? Right, well, it's not, right, apparently. Because John Spencer had quietly, and they didn't know and all that sort of stuff, right? And I got this list of 3 or 4 names, and I think, yeah, maybe. But you try to tell me that there wasn't in place that you wouldn't sign, you didn't have religious apartheid there, because that's what, I didn't hate many clubs, but I did hate Rangers for that. And it wasn't the anti-Catholic thing, it was just like, it's the apartheid thing. It was just, don't be bigoted towards anyone. Had Celtic done it and don't allow Protestants, I would have despised them the same way. I really would have. That's what my family's like. We're quite pure about that sort of thing. So politically, I mean, I had uncles. One of my uncles wrote speeches for Jimmy Reid. I mean, we're quite a political family in that way. Yeah. But there was a political awakening of trying to do the right things for the right reasons, not doing it for show. And one of the things we certainly taught from my dad and my brothers, and definitely my school teachers, there's a lot of people they call it virtue signaling now. They didn't call it that then. They call it showing off. Don't do it for virtue signaling. do it if you can make a difference.
Yeah.
If you feel you can make a difference. And I had this name drop, clang. I had this conversation with Billy Bragg about many years ago, just when he was starting out, and I used to go and see Billy quite a bit. And I said to him, "Hey Billy, there was some protest going on there, and there's a list of names, and your name wasn't on it." I was amazed. He went, "Was it not?" And I went, "That's the point. Make sure it still gets its power. Use it when it'll have an effect." Mm-hmm. And certainly use it for the right reasons, because there's a million things out there we can all put our names to that are all good. That's now virtue signalling, isn't it? That's not helping anymore. So I'm still ambassador for show the race on the red card, etc. Right? But in the recent 2 or 3 years, you wouldn't have seen my name in front of it, whereas 10, 15, 20, 25, I'd been the first name there. Mm-hmm. Now, my name's still there, but there's other people that have a better effect on it now. There are other people. When I'm asked, I will be there. And I am there all the time. But I will, if I can use my name for something I think is important and I'm very, very strongly believe in, I will use it for that. And so there is a political position that I have. It's very rarely party political. And it's got less and less party political as I've gone on in my life. I can remember the Labour Party asked me if Tony Blair got his people to talk to me. Asking me if I wanted to stand, and I'm like, I'm chairman of the union, and we're just about going to strike. How do you feel about that, Tone? No, because they were not quite as lefty. And so you use, political's interesting, because there's so much political mayhem going on in our world just now, and I take them all as single issues now. I take almost everything as single issues, and if I can help a single issue, I will. If I can, but I won't go out and shout and bawl and just be noisy and try to get in front of people's faces for the sake of it. I can't see the point.
There is the 1984 situation where you stood up for a black teammate. Now, he had been racially abused by, I'm going to say, people in or on the Chelsea terraces, Chelsea fans, and you stood up for him. What was the reaction from the club?
The reaction from the club was surprising, because I was in a slightly confused state, because I'd been in Glasgow and grown up in Glasgow with the politics that we generally all had. I'd been a student, so that, and my family have got all this kind of leftish leaning, and culturally we're in a place for equality for everyone. And then you go down and you think, what? Why is no one shouting about this? They're booing black players, but one of our own. It didn't matter if it was one of our own or I didn't actually care. But it happened to be one of our own. It was Paul Carnival, who I got on great with. And I was like, and I'd scored the winning goal against Palestine at Selhurst Park, 1-0. And I thought, I don't give a stuff about that. We've won a game, and we're trying to win this league. But that's garbage, that. So all the kind of newspaper men standing outside, because there wasn't a press conference place in these days. They just stood outside, and I just said, "No, I'm not talking about football." Really? Because I've got the headlines waiting for me. I don't want the headlines, really. I don't care about the headlines. I won't read them anyway. They say that, I'm not. This is it. That stuff with Paul there is an absolute disgrace. An embarrassment, that law. Why do we let this happen? So I ranted and ranted and ranted. They didn't use that much of it, most of them. I think they were shocked, because I don't know if anyone had said anything ever before. And I'm there saying, at the end of it, I said, I'm off now. I was really, really furious still. And one of them said, you sure you want us to run this? And I went, yes, I unbelievably want you to run this. You'll get in trouble. With who? What have I said wrong? Oh, the club will not be happy. Stuff them. If they're not happy, it's their problem. And to be fair, they did, a lot of papers run this stuff, and the reactions to it were fabulous. The fans writing to us. At the next game, it was honestly almost, I'm kind of, don't get that emotional that often, but I was almost in tears running out the next day because they sang Paul's name before mine, like, yes, or anyone's. It was just genius, man. But the club did grab us in and just said, look, we don't think you should be doing that. And I'm saying, like, I don't get you. I don't know where you're coming from. And they were just saying, no, it's dangerous for you, and these are National Front people, and it's putting off your own fans. If they're our fans, I don't want them. I don't want them cheering me. I don't give a stuff about them. And they were, I'll be honest with you, they hadn't been educated to a way that they should have been, the club, some people at the club. And others at the club who did understand, they were fearful that I'd be walking about. I used to get the tube around all the time and I got myself into scrapes. And they thought somebody would dig me up, probably break my leg or something like that. So they were trying to care for us in their own sort of stupid way. But I wasn't for having it. So I just said, no, it's not that. And it was, lots of things happened since then. And I'm going to tell you a story which happened just a couple of days ago, which is brilliant. So lots of people wrote to us. Fans got behind Paul. Got rid of a lot of it. No, we didn't get rid of a lot of it, but we started the conversation. PFA got in touch, said, we think they're starting a campaign. I went, what's kept you? Why are you not doing this already? They're your members apart from anything else. And God was like, oh, right, okay. So we kind of started it there, the anti-racism stuff. And it was small and it was ramshackle, but it's growing. It's really, you look at world football now, it's everywhere, isn't it? And I'm not saying it's not perfect, of course it's not, but I've come a big distance in a way. But when I forget all that, so that's just timing again. I'm somebody out of time. I'm somebody who should have been 30 years in the future, happened to be standing there at the time, and I'd come from a different direction. So it's not me being great, it's the people of Glasgow, it's the people that brought me up, it's the people who I lived among. That's who are the people that were right, because I just happened to be their spokesman at that moment.
It seemed natural to you.
Yes, I couldn't do anything else. I could not do anything else. So I do often get people saying, man, but you were the first that did that. And I've had 2 doctorates for it. I'm Dr. Nevin, because some people know the history of it. People have studied the history of it. But I don't want that. I like it. It was nice because I can wind up my daughter as a real doctor. But it's not me. It's who I come from. It's where I come from. It's the people at Celtic Park in those days had that stuff. It's everything. So all that background stuff was all there. But there were a good number of Chelsea fans that were black. And I was thinking, well, you can't be standing on that terrace and hearing all this monkey noise. It's garbage as well. So anyway, as the years have gone by, as a strange thing happens every now and then in London, I'll be on a tube or something, because I work there most weeks. Even during the pandemic, weirdly, when you work for the BBC, you're allowed to travel in your own car. And somebody will cross a tube, and there'll be a black guy and they'll look and they'll go. And my heart will absolutely leap, because I know what it is. I know what the song is. It's like, yeah, I was there. And it's always cool. It's never a grab or a fist bump, or never, it's just, and sometimes it's a respect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, I'd say that, I remember mentioning this to, I might have read that in the book, I can't remember if I did. But my wife, I told her about this a wee while ago, because it happened to me all the time, but I'd never mentioned it. I mean, not all the time, but it happens now and again. And I'd never mentioned it, and she read it when I'd written the book. And she went, did that really happen? Anyway, we were in London last week, and walking down Ken High Street, and a van stopped him. It was a white van, peeped his horn, and I looked over, and it was a black guy. Just like that. And my wife went, you're right. And he did. I just went like that and walked on. And it was the coolness of it, and it's the comfort of it. And I promise you, Glasgow Tech, Aberdeen, thanks for the doctorate. Anything else, thanks guys. That's more important.
Oh, that's massive.
Oh, it's just brilliant. Honestly, I feel a bit spine tingly every time it happens. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it's just, goes back to the original point. Use your position and your name only when you feel you can have an effect. Mm-hmm. Watch the fans slaughtering the Big Six in England. How good was that?
I know.
They used it at the right time. So that's kind of where all that kind of started and came from. And then, although you'd be seen as a bit right on and a bit of a bore, and if you read about somebody who's talking about that, it does sound a bit earnest, And as you can probably tell, I'm not at all, but it does come across that way. And maybe that's the reason why I started writing a bit, to say, look, you can do all this stuff, but you can also have a right good laugh in the middle of it. And there's a story I tell, which I won't tell you at length, I'm sure you smiled, where we had a player playing at Rangers for us who was a black player called Keithy Jones, and he was getting dogs abuse up there. But the reaction to it was actually brilliant and hilarious. The final denouement, when they discovered that his replacement was actually called Priest, which was much worse than being black as far as we were concerned. So you can, in the midst of it all, I come from Scotland. We have this history of humour. Billy Connolly laughed his head off at all this stuff. I kind of have to laugh at it myself. And be it sectarianism, which you well know that I can't be bothered with, or any of that stuff. You say what you want to say, but you also laugh at it as well. And I'm doing that.
Brilliant. Right, this is a biggie, Pat. This is a biggie. The last one I was a wee bit concerned about, but I thought
It's all right. No, it's all right with that.
Now, I know you're not going to like the batter.
Oh.
Again,
I know where we are here.
it's a delicacy. And until recently, I've never tasted one of these.
Never seen one. Tasted one? I've never seen one. There's so much batter in it, and it's hot.
It's too hot?
No.
Is it all right? Is it edible?
It is a Mars bar, isn't it?
It is.
Right, and it is battered.
And you wonder, at what stage does someone think this was a good idea?
Probably after the Bucky. I was.
Potentially, yeah.
Oh, never.
An accompaniment to
Oh
the
my
buck.
God. This is the one I'm most concerned about.
And this is a man who's been watching his diet throughout his entire life.
I'm currently just now, because I've had a wee injury, so I can't run at the moment. I'm a fanatical runner. Right, I'm going to go for it.
Let's do it. It's a deep dive.
Well, it's the first one I have to say that's vile. The chocolate's great, I'm a chocoholic, but that
Not a good mix.
no, it doesn't work for me.
You should have kept the Buckfast. You could have.
Nah, cold tea
washed it
needed
down.
better.
Washed it down.
Right, two things that don't go together are purely personal taste. Can I give you a hint to anybody listening and watching just now? There is one thing that many people don't know about, and if you try it once, you will never be able to do it again, right? Pizza, Thousand Island sauce. Just try it. I'm just saying. Doesn't sound right, does it? You're already thinking,
yeah.
No. Trust me, just try it. Because about 1 in 2 people that I've told to try it, everyone says, no, it's disgusting, right? And they do it. And everybody I know now, I had a cameraman, mate of mine. He said to me, I told him to try it one day. Oh, no, I tried it. Anyway, I met him in Moscow about 5 years later for the World Cup. And we were in a pizza place. And I said, oh, God, mate, how you doing? Good to see you again. Big Rangers fan, this guy. Weird. Oh, I've just thought of another great story, which I'm going to write down. Anyway, oh, this is a good one. But anyway, he sat down and he was in rush. He was trying to talk to this Russian waiter, explaining to him, now this is how you make the sauce. You get salad cream and you get sauce. He's actually getting them to make Thousand Island, which is actually just ketchup and salad cream, is it? Yeah, you just mix it up. That's all it is. Because he couldn't actually have pizza anymore without it because I told him. So, things that don't go together, some things work. Not for me, but it's a personal taste, isn't it?
Well, thanks for getting into the spirit of it, though.
It's all right,
Pat.
pleasure.
And the favourite section, or my favourite section of this chat, is around music. And
Oh, how long have we got?
Pat, Nevin and music go hand in hand. You're an avid record collector, you're a DJ, you're featured in the pages of the NME, you have met and spoken to people like John Peel,
Yeah.
a hero of yours. Tell me about your love affair with music.
It's always had it. You can do anything, music. You can be happy, you can be sad, you can be joyous, glorious, you can... It's like kind of food or taste and that. There's a memory that's put in there. And I often say to people, where are the great things in your life that you remember? You live every day, and how many days do you really remember of all those days? Really? You don't remember that many. But But I could ask you some of the gigs you went to and you remember that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it happened a wee bit with football. I can remember I remember that game. Usually the ones I've watched, not the ones I played, and I don't remember them as well. But music does that. And sometimes it's the whole gig, but quite often it's one song, part of a song, and you're just in a different emotional and physical and almost spiritual sphere. And I'm not spiritual really, I'm not really religious, but, you know, but it just takes you to an amazing place. I was telling a story, the last gig I went to before the lockdown was and I thought I was maybe getting a bit old for those feelings. And the band sang a song, and I almost couldn't speak. It really affected me. This is some of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. And they finished it, and nobody applauded. Nobody said anything. Everybody just went for quite a while. Mm-hmm. And it was the strangest thing where just the moment was right and everybody got it. And it was at St Jude's place just by the Barras. It's Camera Obscura. We were playing an old song, Books Written for Girls. And the whole place just stopped. And there was a variety of reasons. The song was beautiful, it was a classic old one of theirs. Everybody there loved that band, including me. There was a sadness in it that Kerry, the keyboard player, died a little while back, and that was the first gigs back after. But it was just the most beautiful, beautiful, perfect moment. And I know that the day before I die, if I want to think about that, I can bring it up in the moment. How many days are like that?
I know.
And that's music. That's music for me. And it follows me everywhere. And one of my favourite things in the world is finding a new band. I mean, before I came here today, I was 5 minutes late. My deepest apologies. But I was in Edinburgh meeting a guy who I DJ with in London. He happened to be up here. Meeting his sister. And we were talking about all these new bands. And I suggested him, you should try New Dad. And New Dad, it's a brilliant new single out. And this single I feel as good about as I felt about Teenage Kicks when it came out.
Right.
Now, I might not feel the same way about it in 6 months' time, but what a brilliant, brilliant feeling that is, to have that, and to still have it. So I think I'm quite lucky that I still have that kind of youthful joyfulness of it. And it's not, as you can tell, it's not affected, it's just something I dearly love. And yet, there's nothing wrong with it. And I am not a snob about it. I mean, my son, fanatical for music, he goes and watches all sorts of bands. But he'll go and watch boy bands. Mm-hmm. He'll go and watch OMD, he'll go and watch, Little Mix, he'll do anything. And we'll go and see some really hit bands that I go, wow, really? It doesn't matter, as long as you're loving it, and as long as you're getting a passion out of it. So the music's been a massive, massive part. I met some great friends out of it. And there's just so many crossovers with music and football. I come up with an idea for a music and football show which I'd developed. And it's the only time I've ever developed something I thought, right, that absolutely works. So I took it to some people, and they turned it down flat. I'm like, what's wrong with it?
What I love about the book, Pat, is the song titles.
Yes,
for the chapters.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guessing if you're like myself, I mean, they might change because your taste change, and it's difficult to say this is my top 3 songs. Do you remember the first time Pulp, for example?
Yeah.
So, you know.
I mean, to me, and it fits, of course. It's the first chapter.
Yes.
Do you remember the first thing? So it fits, but it's a good track. Kind of evocative. Some of them are evocative of the time. Mm-hmm. There's not that many new songs there because it's supposed to be evocative of the time. And also, I was kind of trying to do a sneaky thing, and I don't know if it happened to you. I was trying to stick it in your brain as an earworm while you're reading the. So you're kind of reading it, but that's kind of somewhere in the background.
Absolutely.
But it kind of works. And there's also, I kind of like passing things on. Mm-hmm. So if you like 6 of those tracks and think, oh, I don't know that one, Spook's cool, I'll go and listen to it.
You've given us a mixtape, Pat.
That's exactly what it is, yes.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. So tell us about the book. Tell us when and where can we get this?
Well, it's out on 20th May. There's, I'm a terrible salesman. I just love the writing of it, but I mean, you can get it you can order it on Amazon right away, and you can get it at Waterstones. If you go to Waterstones, you can get it signed. It's already signed. You get it everywhere. Do you know the best bit about it, the funniest bit, like this? We sent it out to quite a few people, and they seemed to get a good reaction, because it's not kind of like a normal football book, I don't think. And it got a really good reaction from various people. In fact, I think yesterday I read a Guardian review of it, and it's dead nice about it, right? So the publisher said, we're going to make it into an audiobook. I went, oh, that's a real, I'm surprised. I wonder who you're going to get to read it. You. I went, what? Nobody can understand a word that I say, so I'm Watford. Are you kidding? So I had to read it. And do you know what? It turned out it was brilliant. You can get it in the audiobook, but it's actually a kind of sales pitch, but you can get it in the audiobook, but in actual fact, it's something extra special about that as well, because you can put better intonations on it, and you can say it, and you can use a bit of the accent a bit stronger. Hopefully people can still understand it. And also you can do mimics of, my Alan Hansen mimicry wasn't great, but it's good, it's just brilliant fun. So you can get it, end of May. In simple terms, I know you want to sell, and I'd like people to buy it. I just hope people enjoy it. It's as simple as that. I hope people enjoy it.
I've read it, Pat, and I thought it was superb. So thank you for some of the musical recommendations as well. You've been a great sport. You've been eating things that you don't like. You've been drinking Buckfast and you don't know it was Buckfast. So thanks for getting involved in Tartan Taste Buds.
It's been an absolute pleasure.